we're all from Torchbox. I'm Tom, one of the co-founder of Torchbox and the CTO, and I look after the Wagtail open source project. We're all from Torchbox, and I've also got Carl and Matthew and Jacob here who are on the core team with me, and Ollie, my co-founder, and Abigail, who's like a big Wagtail expert and using Wagtail on a lot of our projects. So between us, we're going to demo some new features in Wagtail and from the wider ecosystem. We're also going to talk about some upcoming features, so things that are going to be added to Wagtail soon. And yeah, we look forward to hearing your questions. This should take about 45 minutes, but up to an hour if there's enough to talk about. But I'm going to start by handing over to Abigail.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to start by showing you the Wagtail and Airtable import that we've been working on. So this was sponsored by the Motley Fool, and this has allowed them to give more people access to make changes to pages that they have in Wagtail without actually needing to give everyone permission to Wagtail. Airtable is something we're seeing a lot more people using now, and including us at Torchbox. It's a bit of a combination between Google Sheets and a database, and it can be really useful if you've got a lot of data that you want to update all in one go. So for example, if you want to unpublish quite a few pages, that's something you can do with Airtable, and I'm actually going to show you how you can do that a little bit later on. So I'm just going to share my screen, and you can see here that I have an instance of Wagtail, and I have Airtable over here as well. So I've got two tables set up here. One is for the feature descriptions, and this is just a snippet that we have in Wagtail. And the other one is for the blogs pages. I just want to quickly mention that on this snippets, I do only have a few, so it might not be that useful when you only have sort of 10 snippets, but it's really useful if you have hundreds. So I'm going to start by adding a feature description snippet in Wagtail. So to do this, I'm going to go into snippets, and then I will go into the feature description snippet here. I'm then going to add a new feature description and just add some test content here. So when I click save, you'll see over here on my Airtable instance that automatically populates and it's shown there in Airtable. The other thing that I can do is delete these snippets from Wagtail. So if I go back into Wagtail, and if I decide that actually this Airtable test snippet isn't very good and I don't want that anymore, then I can click delete. And once I approve that, that is just removed from Airtable. So you can see that's all automatically done for you. So what about the other way around? What if someone has access to Airtable, but they don't have access to Wagtail? Well, we can still add and edit these snippets in Airtable. It just won't automatically populate them in Wagtail, and we'll have to do a little import for that. So to show you how this works, I'm just going to add a snippet here in Airtable. So I'm just going to call it test snippet. And I'm just going to put an introduction of test. Now, back in Wagtail, you can see here I've got this import feature descriptions button, or you can go into settings and Airtable import here. As I'm already on the snippets page, I'm just going to use this one. So I'm going to click import feature descriptions. And then once that's finished importing, I'm going to hop back over to my feature descriptions snippet list. And when I scroll down to the bottom, you can see that test snippet here has been imported for me from Airtable. So doing this import will import every new item or every edit that you've made to Airtable, but I've only added one, so only that one is moving across. I can also edit these, so if actually I decide that I don't want this to be called test snippet and I just want it to be called test, then I can go back into Wagtail, again, import the feature descriptions, and when I go back in, you'll see that that title has been updated and it is now just called test. So you can also use this for page types. So if a user does only have access to Airtable and you want them to be able to edit pages, then you can set this up in exactly the same way that I've shown you for snippets, but for pages. So if I just go to my blog post Airtable, one thing that you can do here is unpublish a few of the pages that you've got live. So to do this, I would scroll over to the right and you can see I've got this live checkbox column. So if I untick a couple of these, and then when I run the import for the blog pages in Wagtail, that will just unpublish those pages for me, and that's it done. So it's all been managed in Airtable, and it's been really quick and easy for me to do. The next thing that I want to show you is the Google Image import work that was sponsored by Made with Circuit. So this is importing images from Google Drive into Wagtail. So in order to import these images, I need to go to the image folder here. So this is your image libraries. This is just where all the images that you've uploaded or that you've used on your Wagtail site are stored. Then from here, I can click on this drop down next to add an image, and I can choose to import from Drive. On this page, you get to choose the collection that you want your images to go to. So there are a couple that I have here. I've got root and I've got blog images, but I'm just going to choose to leave it on the root for now. I'm then going to click on this button to select my images. Now, if you haven't given Wagtail permission to access your Google Drive before, then you will get a pop-up here and you will need to sign into your Google account, but mine are already linked because I've done this a couple of times, so it takes me straight into Drive and I can just choose my photos straight away. So I can choose a whole folder of photos if I want to, or I can choose some individual photos, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to choose these two, and I'm going to click select. Now, because I'm not trying to upload any duplicate images, I'm taken straight into uploading the images into Wagtail. So when these are uploading, you have a few different options that you can do. You can edit the title, you can edit or add tags, and you can also change the collection, or you can do nothing and they're just already uploaded for you. So I'm just going to remove this person tag and click update, and I'm going to leave this one as it is. So now when I go back to my image library, you'll see that both of these images have been uploaded. And when I go onto this one, which I removed the person tag for, you can see that that update has worked and that tag is no longer there. Now I'm just going to quickly run through the upload again, just to show you what happens if I try and upload some duplicate images. So again, I'm taken to here and I can choose my collection, and I'm just going to choose exactly the same images that I chose last time because I know they're already in Wagtail, so I know that this will show the duplication work for you. So I'm just going to choose the same two, and I'm going to click select. Now, if any duplicate images are found, then you're taken to this screen. So these obviously are two duplicate images, and Wagtail image import has some really advanced image deduping that helps editors not upload the same images multiple times. So there's a few different options that I have on this screen. I can choose to replace the original image, I can keep both images, or I can cancel the upload. I can do this on bulk for all of the duplicate images that I'm uploading at this time, just by using this selection at the top. Or I can do it on an image by image basis. So I might decide that I want to replace this original image, but actually I just want to cancel the upload for this other one. And then I'm going to click confirm. So as you can see here, the one that I decided to cancel the upload on, it isn't uploading again to Wagtail, but the image that I decided to replace, it is uploading again. And here I again have the same options. I can edit the title, the tags, and the collection if I want to, or I can decide that actually I'm happy with what Wagtail suggested here, and I can just go back into my images and see that they have been uploaded for me. So the next steps for the image import work will be to allow editors to import these images on specific pages, so while they're actually editing pages rather than having to go into the image library. We're also looking at adding additional sources, so it doesn't necessarily have to be Google Drive, but we could also add things like OneDrive. And also to look at bringing this duplication detection into core, so any images that you upload to Wagtail, whether that's from your computer or from an import, will have that image duplication detection on it as well. We do have a couple of minutes, so if anyone's got any questions, then please do feel free to ask them now.
Thanks, Abigail. There are some questions. One that's been answered already. So Simon asked about saying that they use Airtable quite extensively, and is there any error reporting for validation issues? But helpfully, Caleb, who actually was one of the authors of this plugin, has responded to say that validation goes through Django REST framework serializers. So I think one thing to be aware of here is that while pushing content into Airtable, you can be very flexible about that because Airtable is very liberal about what it accepts. You don't want to be quite so easy when you're moving content into Wagtail. So that's why we have that manual step where it doesn't push automatically, but you do the import. Simon said we'll have a play with this when it lands in a release, but you don't need to wait till then, Simon, because this is actually a third-party tool. It's you can install it with pip install Wagtail Airtable, and it's all ready to go now. So I hope it works out for you. Agnieszka asks, can we use the image deduplicating separately? And sadly, not yet, but this is the plan, that we will refactor it so that we take that deduplication work from this image import plugin and make it part of Wagtail itself, which I think would be a big improvement. Nicholas asks, is there any limit on the number of images to be uploaded in one time? Jacob, I'll let you answer that one.
No, Google does impose some limits after you start requesting lots, but that's kind of really on their side, and it's just about when their server decides to cut you off. But really on the Wagtail side, there's no limit.
Fantastic. All right, I think we'll stop there for questions, but keep them coming, and we'll try and answer online or later. And I want to talk just generally about the kind of the Wagtail ecosystem. And just to be clear, both those features that Abigail showed are not in core Wagtail. These are apps that you can add really easily with a few lines of import code and then some configuration depending on how you want them to work. So one is the Wagtail Airtable that you can import, and the other is the image import. And we'll put the links up either here or we'll share them afterwards. And I think in both cases, it's like a strong example of ways that the ecosystem around Wagtail is really growing. And there's been this growing collection of tools for a while, but we're starting to kind of make a better effort to organize it. And actually, I'm going to share my screen and show you some examples of this. So initially, there was a project, this awesome Wagtail project. You might have seen these around the web. So it's quite a standard thing on GitHub. You'll have an awesome-technology name page, usually curated by kind of third party. And it's a single page on GitHub with a lot of links that's managed by the community. And this has been a really good starting point for Wagtail. And if you haven't seen it already, I definitely recommend Googling awesome Wagtail and looking through these, and I expect you'll find some useful tools that you don't know about already. But it's not, as the ecosystem grows, it's not as kind of scalable as we want. So recently, we've decided to take a slightly different approach, and really appreciate the help of the Dutch agency 4 Digits, and particularly Koen van der Kamp, who's one of the core Wagtail team members. I think he's listening to this webinar. So Koen's done a great job of reorganizing all the available Wagtail packages into Django packages, which is an existing framework for managing this stuff. So at the moment, the best place to go is his blog post on the 4 Digits site. And then from here, you can see all the ways they've been categorized. So if you're interested in accessibility in Wagtail, then you can see all the items available here, and each of them will show the development status and how many stars it's got on GitHub and activity and so on. Or you might be interested in Wagtail blog. That's a pretty common area. So here we can see quite a few Wagtail blog projects, some more active than others. So this is going to be the way that we we organize our plugins in the third-party system from now on. And I think it makes sense to do this way because it's kind of standing on top of the systems that already exist. I think this is a very last-minute demo, but I'm just going to show you give you one more demo, and I hope this works because we just put it together in the last few minutes. This is a feature called Wagtail Transfer, and again, this is something that you can pip install now. And we've seen a few different approaches to this over the years, and but this is one that is now within the Wagtail repository, the Wagtail organization on GitHub. So it's kind of officially supported, and it's this kind of thing that you might use in a sort of more enterprisey environment. So we know about banks using approaches like this, or some really kind of high-profile websites in the tech sector, and others in the finance sector. And it's the sort of situation where, for most people, I think the workflow that you get in Wagtail is enough. So you have different permissions, and moderators and editors will create content, and then moderators and admins might make it live. But if you're in a sort of environment where it's really important that there's a kind of stricter firewall between your staging content and your production content, you might want to have 2 instances and then to be able to move all the content between the staging instance and the production instance. And that's what this feature allows. So I'm just going to show this very quickly. So this is, I've got slightly the wrong way around. So here's, imagine this is our first site and here's our second site. So here, I'm going to create a new page underneath the home page. I'll just make a standard page. This is on the Wagtail site, and I'm going to call it what's new in Wagtail. Hello world, this doesn't matter too much. And I think I need to just add some text in a paragraph in order to be able to save it. So I've now created that page in a draft mode on one site. Now if I go to the next site, you see the URL slightly change. I can go to this import feature, and from import I can select my source site. So we only have one here, but you could set this up with many. And now I'm going to select the pages to import. So what I do is search, and immediately, so this is searching the other site, I'm then able to select that page, choose where I want to have it here. It's telling me it's going to import one page. I'll import it. That's done. And now that same page with the same status and the same content is available on this side. And that was just for one page, but perhaps a more typical example would be I want to import the whole site with 152 pages, or all the snippets, or a subsection of the site. And all of these cases are supported. It works very smoothly, and I think it's really a good solution for people who want that kind of hard break between production and staging environments for their content. Okay, I'm going to stop on the demos now. Do ask questions about that, but for now we're going to move on to talking about, I think, the biggest feature in Wagtail over the last 6 months. And we did do a demo of this in our last What's New in Wagtail session, which was the first one. But this is Wagtail-localize. So this is our approach for handling multi-language sites in Wagtail. And again, there have been several methods for doing this over the years in Wagtail, but there's been considerable investment in Wagtail-localize, which is the new standard for doing this. And I think is not just the new standard for Wagtail, but I think is a new standard for open source content management systems in general. This has been funded with a range of organizations. Torchbox has invested a lot in it. Google originally had some requirements around this, and more recently Mozilla have been made significant contributions to improving this feature. I'm going to hand over now to Carl and Ollie, who are going to talk to you about the UI changes that we've made and the new features that we can show off.
Hi everybody, so I'm Ollie. I'm the other founder at Torchbox, creative director. I have a little bit of oversight on the user experience and interaction design work that we do on Wagtail. So Carl's going to demo the Wagtail-localize feature, but before he does that, I'm just going to introduce it a little bit and introduce a couple of the fundamental design decisions that we've made along the way. And it'd be rather old school and use a keynote deck. But people haven't seen one of these for a while. Okay. So Wagtail-localize. Localize provides features for translation and localization. So very broadly, translation is just the actual act of translating a piece of content, whereas localization is when you translate the content and then you change it to give it more local relevance. So for example, changing a photo to something more locally significant, or rewriting content in a more culturally acceptable way. And there are two ways to sort of tackle this kind of problem in CMSs. So the first way is field level localization. So this is where you provide alternate content versions on the same page. Here are a couple of kind of ways this has been done historically in Wagtail. So on the left, you can see just about, I hope, that there's a series of title fields in different languages, and you'd get this kind of replication of field with the different language versions for every field you had on your page in this kind of implementation. And then on the right, you can see it's the same sort of, it's the same situation in that it's in the same page, but this time translations are contained within separate tabs. So it's a bit possibly have a nicer kind of editing experience and perhaps a bit more scalable, but it's still the same fields in the same page. The other option is to do page level localization. So this is where each language variant is stored in a completely separate page in Wagtail, and that ends up creating separate sort of language branches or sites within your Wagtail instance. And this approach works better as a more flexible, scalable solution, we think. So this is the approach that we've taken in Wagtail-localize. So what are the advantages of this approach? Firstly, a translation or a localized version can be an exact translation of the site, but also you might want it so that that translated localized version grows independently of the original version. So you might have your English site here, but then your Spanish site, you might want to have extra sections or extra content in time. So in order to do that, you need really a separate sort of site. With the page level localization, it's very scalable. Whereas with field level localization, where you might have, say, 12 language versions of a big page on the same page, you can see how you might have some performance issues with that. And when you have page level localization, these different sites, you can have some language instances published and some in draft statuses. Whereas if your languages are all on the same page, that page is either published or not. And finally, you can translate slugs too, which is nice in this page level kind of approach. So that's the first kind of important design decision that we've made. The other thing that I want to show you is how do we actually translate content? And we've created a kind of different interface for translating and managing translated content within Wagtail. I'm just going to explain how that interface is particularly important when you're doing linked pages. So here I've got my English site and my French site, or my Wagtail Bakery sites, and you can see the baguette page is I've got this line indicating that it's linked to the French baguette page is linked to the English baguette page. The idea is that we'd want to keep them totally in sync. So if we made a change to the English version, we'd like to tell the French translated version to update itself. So in that sort of situation, you don't want editors going in and making other sorts of changes. But it may be that you want to separate these kind of different pages and create separate localized page versions in the way that I talked about, that kind of different language site scaling and becoming it something separate. In this case, you want to kind of break that kind of sync link between the English baguette page and the French baguette page. I mean, of course, the French have probably got an awful lot more to say about baguettes than English people, so you don't want that exact relation. So we've created a special interface to manage the initial translation and those pages that stay in this linked mode. And I want to just show you that now. So on the left of my screen, you can see the standard Wagtail edit page interface. And on the right of the screen, you can see the same page translated into French in translation mode. So the first thing to note about when you're doing a translation in a content management system is you don't generally translate it line by line in the way that you might enter content. You tend to use a translation service. So you download a PO file, a portable object file, send it off to your translation service, and then upload the translated version, and it fills in all the translations here. If you don't have a translation service, you can either do it manually or you can use a machine translation service like DeepL or Google Translate or whatever, and Carl will show you this in a second. And if you want your page to stay in this linked mode where it's an exact replica of the original content version, you leave it in this mode, and we're able to identify when each of these strings need updating and show you that nice and clearly. But if you want to change your page and let it kind of evolve beyond the translated version, adding new content, then you'll want to end translation mode. You can see that's the top link in the drop up at the bottom. And when you do that, it'll return this page to a normal page edit mode. So it'll be the French language stuff, but displayed as a normal Wagtail edit page would be. Okay, I hope that's given you a little bit of an intro, and I'm going to hand over to Carl now for the demo.
Thank you, Ollie. Hello, everyone. I'm Carl, and I'm going to demo the Wagtail-localize package. So here's my screen. So as you can see, this is the Wagtail Bakery demo. This is our internal demo we use for building and demoing new Wagtail features. This particular version has the latest version of Wagtail installed and also the Wagtail-localize package. Currently, the entire site is in English, and as you can see, if you look at the URL up here, we have a prefix on the whole site /en. This is so we can have separate URLs for each language. So for example, France would be /fr, but for your default language, it's optional to have the /en. You can configure this to just respond on the root URL. The advantage of having it in this way is that it allows you to have browser language detection. So say if I visit the site at the root path, it should automatically forward me to /en. And anyone else who has a foreign language browser will be routed to the correct language. So now I'm going to quickly show you how to translate this site into French using Wagtail-localize. So I'm going to just go to the Wagtail admin. And the first thing I have to do is set up a new locale. So currently, so we go into settings, locales, and currently we just have English. And I'm going to add a new locale. And the reason why we call them locales is we'd like to encourage you to use these also for localizing content into particular regions. In this example, I only have languages set up, so English, French, and Spanish. These are configured by your developer, and it really depends on what your front end supports. So if you're haven't got translations in your front end for a particular language, you wouldn't add it here. You can actually set up regions on these as well. So you have French for Canada and French for France as well. So I'm going to set up French, and I'm going to set the sync from field to English. What this does is it'll initialize the whole site with the existing English content, and any changes that are made to the English content will actually be affected to French unless those pages have been translated. So let's save that. And now this should have created a new page tree based on the English tree. So it's exactly the same as English at the moment. And we can navigate through that tree using these new little UIs. This jumps us between the English version and the French. But yes, it's exactly mirroring the English content. If we try and edit one of these pages, you'll see we'll get a warning saying that this is a mirror. Any changes that are made to the English version at this time will be also automatically synced with the French. But if we translate the page, that'll allow us to actually turn this into a French page. So let's hit that button and click submit. Now you see the page editor has changed into this new translation editor. Each paragraph of the page and field value has been split out into a separate field. This prevents translators from modifying the structure of the page, and it allows keeping it up to date with the English content much easier. But we can disable that. I'll show you how to do that later. We can translate this content directly. So I can set this breads and click save, and now that string is translated. Or we can download a PO file for the entire page. So we just open that, and this is just a standard format for transferring the source strings, and also when these are filled in, we can upload that PO file here with the translations, and then those translations will be loaded in. We can also translate with a machine translation service. So I've got this set up with DeepL, and I'll just quickly try that now. So let's click that button. As you can see, this has now filled in all those empty strings with some French. So DeepL, as the name suggests, uses deep learning. So these are fairly good quality. They're probably not as good as a human written one, but they're pretty good. And also they also support inline styling as well. So things like bold text and links that are in the previous English version have actually been carried through to the French, which I think is really nice. Before I move on, I'd like to quickly show you how images are handled. As you can see, we got all the images on the page are also displayed here. By default, it'll stay in sync with the English version. So if this image is updated in the English version of the page, it'll be updated here too. But you can optionally override them for certain locales. You might want to do this, for example, if it had some English text on that image and you wanted to replace it with a version with the text translated to French. So I'll just quickly demo how that is done. We just hit this change image button here, and I'm going to search for a baguette, and now that's replaced. It'll stay like that until we switch it back to English. If there's any updates to English, that won't update this, but we can switch back to the English version by clicking this button here. So let's publish that. Sorry, there we go. And now view live. As you can see, the page is now in French. We've got all this here, and as you can see, all the links have also been carried through as well. And our image is now a baguette instead of. So there are still some bits of the site that aren't translated into French. So as you can see, these pages here, these are still mirroring the English content. So I'll quickly show you how to translate a page, another page. So let's translate this Anadama page. Now let's edit this. And that takes us back to this same view we got earlier. If we hit translate this page and then submit, we now get to the translation editor. Yeah, so I'll quickly translate this to DeepL. And there we go. And also, actually, there's another way of translating content that I forgot to mention a minute ago. You can integrate this with an external translation service. So Mozilla are currently using an older version of this, but that's automatically synchronizing with a service called Pontoon. And here we have the content of give.mozilla.org, and that's being translated to French and German through here. So these files are created by Wagtail and kept up to date by Wagtail. And as soon as a contributor translates them and they get approved, they're automatically sent back to Wagtail, and then Wagtail creates the pages. Yeah, so finally, I'd like to show you how snippets are handled. So as you can see here, we've got two snippets that both have got text on them. So we would need to translate these as well. These are brought out here and they're automatically submitted. So that we can click edit. That takes you to the editor for the snippet, and we can just translate these using DeepL again, and I'll publish them. Back, edit that, and then hit DeepL again. Publish, and there we go. They should say 1 out of 1 segments translated. Let's publish this page, and we can view it live. There we go. So it's all in French, and these have also been translated to French. If we later decide that we want to change the structure of this page, we can disable the translation mode by going into the actions and click end translation mode. This means that it'll no longer receive any updates from the English version, but it will remain linked to the original page. But this lets you add extra paragraphs to the page if you like. Finally, I'd like to show you how we would translate a snippet that is on its own. So at the bottom of this site, you've got this little quote that's not linked to any page. So we need to translate this independently of a page. So let's go into here, and then we can go snippets, footer text. This is where that footer text is managed, and we can hit translate here. And I'll translate that to French, submit. And now if we visit the French side, we can edit that, and here we go. We've got a translation that here. Translate it DeepL, publish it. And now if we go to the French site, go to the beginning, it should have pulled in the French version of that snippet. There we go, that's everything you think I was going to show. So Wagtail-localize, we plan to release version 1.0 of that around the same time as Wagtail 2.11, which will be around the beginning of November.
Thank you very much, Carl. Such a great demo that I never get tired of seeing how fast DeepL does his translations. It's amazing. I'm aware that Carl covered a lot in that time, and we are going to we are recording the session, and we'll make the video available later. Lisa will send it out when that's ready, so you can watch it at 50% speed if you want to really pick up on all the details. Yeah, and we'll also be showing links that will have a lot more documentation as well. But there's a lot of features there, and I think it's a really powerful system. We've got some questions coming in, and well, actually, first from Brady. This isn't a question, but I'm just going to read it out because it's nice. Wow, this is way better than what I've been doing. Very cool. Thank you, Brady. But also a question from Ono. Would you upgrade from Wagtail Trans to this model in Wagtail for older websites that were built? Will this keep maintenance for coming years easy? Carl?
Yeah, so Wagtail Trans uses the same model of separating out the page trees. So I think it should be possible to migrate. So the translation fields that we have are actually in Wagtail core. So yeah, it may even be possible for us to create like a compatible version of Wagtail Trans that allows you to migrate easily. But yeah, we haven't looked into that yet. But
just for other people on this, Wagtail Trans is another package for handling translations in Wagtail, and it's used widely. It's a really good option, but we've made some changes to core Wagtail in order to make this integration smoother for Wagtail-localize, and it may be that Wagtail Trans can refactor a bit in order to take advantage of those. There's also a question from Benedict asked a similar question about what about transfer from Wagtail model trans, which is like the example that Ollie showed right at the beginning.
Yeah, so this is slightly more tricky than from Wagtail Trans, because obviously Wagtail model trans uses separate fields. It is possible to do. It's a little bit more of a complex data migration because you have to create all the new page trees as well. But yeah, I have done it once in the past, so it is possible.
And Christoph asks, are Streamfields also available for synchronization and translation?
Yes, they are. Yeah. If you have your own custom Streamfield blocks, you may have to supply a couple of methods to allow it to extract the segments from them. But yeah, all the built-in Streamfield blocks are supported.
Great. Thank you, Carl. And thanks everyone for the questions. I think we're going to move on because we're getting towards the end of the hour. And so what we've talked about so far are tools that are available as third-party packages or really imminently available with Wagtail-localize, as Carl said, becoming possible with Wagtail 2.11, which is November the 1st, or around the beginning of November. But we also want to talk about some things which are just coming in the near future, and some work that we're doing around those. And I'm going to start by handing back to Ollie.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, I'm going to talk about Wagtail commenting. So commenting is going to be a great addition to the edit experience and a kind of build on the nice workflow features that we demonstrated in the last What's New in Wagtail. It's not ready for a demo yet, so I'm back in my old keynote demonstrating through some kind of screenshots. But this is a really nice commenting system. It's been sponsored by the Motley Fool again, which we're really appreciative of. And I think this is going to feel really familiar to you if you use Google Docs or Dropbox paper or anything like that. Just to zoom in on a couple of things. So you can show and hide all the comments on a particular page. You can reply to comments. You can resolve comments. You can see that the system over here is able to handle quite a lot of comments in a nice way. It shows you the active comment when you click on it. You can also actually kind of create a comment within a comment, which is quite cool. And you can comment on all sorts of fields. So as well as commenting on text areas like up here, you can comment on these input fields here and fields both inside and outside of Streamfield, and indeed actually image fields as well. So it's going to be a really nice feature, I think, and one that will be a nice addition to the tools we've got here. The last thing on this is that the kind of eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that this has got a collapsed kind of left menu, which we've kind of introduced to afford us a bit more space for the editing area when you've got comments in play. The Streamfield blocks are a bit a bit narrower, but they're wider if we collapse the menu like this. And I think it's going to work. You know, I think it could work really well. It works really well in lots of other applications. So I think it could work really well here. And we're mocking this up now and looking forward to seeing how that will work for us as well, creating a bit more space for us all to edit in. Okay, back to you, Tom.
Thanks, Ollie. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is another forthcoming feature, and it's probably the least exciting visually because it's at a more of a conceptual stage at the moment. But I think it's something that's really important to Wagtail and the future of Wagtail. And in order to talk about it, I'm just going to go back 5 and a bit years to Wagtail 1.0, where I wrote this, as I said, a rather indulgent review for a big release for us. And one of the things that made Wagtail 1.0 a big release was Streamfields, which was, you know, all of you who are using Wagtail now are aware of, but this is really a standout feature for Wagtail. And it's the ability to create kind of rich narrative style, complex pages without needing lots of different templates, but while maintaining structured content that can be filtered and reused in different ways. And I think Streamfields has really been an important part of Wagtail's success, and it's been interesting to see how it's been adopted in other content management systems. So you might have seen that WordPress now has, with its Gutenberg editor, has this more kind of block style way of editing, which has some accessibility issues, but is a nice user interface and follows some of the models that Streamfields laid out in Wagtail. But people used Streamfields in ways that we didn't always anticipate. So while we were imagining these kind of magazine-style narrative pages, people increasingly use Streamfields for quite kind of complex and sometimes heavily nested pages. And here's an example. This one isn't too bad, but this is a long blog post by Caleb about creating, deploying a Wagtail website from scratch. And you can see it's got a lot of different elements. And at this stage, it's fine. But once you start getting to kind of hundreds of different blocks, then the interface starts slowing down a bit and also just feels a bit clunky. And there's some things that we want to be able to do, like something that we saw a lovely demo from New York Public Radio, Wagtail Space, a couple of months ago, the ability to split blocks, for example, or to be able to drag and drop items around the page, or to be able to have autosave in your content editors. And some of these things are a bit harder to do than we'd like because of the technologies that were available when we originally designed Streamfields. So the way that that Django templates and the JavaScript at the front end works together. So there's been some thinking about this in the last 2 years, and in particular, you might have been aware of this Kickstarter project called Wagtail's First Hatch, which was initiated by Bertrand Bourdage, French core Wagtail team member, who started a project to recreate the Wagtail edit interface using React, a very popular front-end framework. And it was a successful project. There was some good funding for it, and Bertrand made some really good progress and delivered on his goals, really. But there were some things about it that, in retrospect, we were a bit nervous about. And in particular, we didn't want to break backwards compatibility for Wagtail, and we wanted to make sure that Wagtail was continued to be a CMS that's powerful for Django and Python developers. So you don't need to know React in order to create new Streamfields blocks, for example. So we've taken some of the UI improvements from this project, but we've rethought a bit the way that we can make this integration possible. And the latest on this is really beautifully expressed by Matthew, who's the Wagtail's lead developer, who's on the call here with us, who written this recent blog post. In fact, if you just go to wagtail.io/blog, you'll take you to this because it's the latest one. And this is about Telepath, Matthew's new project, which is a way of integrating Python and JavaScript and making it possible for us to share the content types and the data with the JavaScript front end in a kind of seamless and clean way. And it sounds like, you know, it is quite a kind of conceptual project, but it's one that exists already, and I think actually will go beyond Wagtail in being a really powerful, useful tool for Django and applications generally. But more importantly for us, it will underpin the developments that we want to make and the investments that we want to put in creating really a kind of next generation user interface for the edit page in Wagtail. And that's a project that we're starting soon. So November the 12th, we are starting a 6-week project, an intense project with a few team members at Torchbox, focusing on using the abilities that Telepath gives us in order to create the beginnings of a new editor that allows us to have, you know, things like splitting blocks and drag and drop and moving around and autosave, and the things that we want to be able to do to make Wagtail like absolutely the best editing experience it can be. So we're really excited about that, and hopefully, so 6 weeks from November the 12th, where that takes us kind of end of the year, and I think it means that when we are having our episode 3 of What's New in Wagtail, sometime in the beginning of 2021, we'll be able to show you the outcomes of this. And it's a nice deadline for us, but I think it's a really exciting prospect. I just want to sign off by saying that a lot of what we've seen today has been made possible by the contributions made by different organizations, and Torchbox is one of those organizations, but there's also people like Mozilla and Motley Fool and Google and Department of International Trade in the UK, who have seen that, who are using Wagtail to run big sites, and have seen that by making kind of focused investments in particular areas, they can rapidly improve, they can significantly improve the workflows of their editors and authors. And it's just, I think it's it can be a very effective way of improving the software that you use. And it's, you know, for us, it's wonderful because it means that we're able to share those benefits with the whole community, which is the kind of, you know, the dream of open source. And I would encourage all of you to think about ways that you might be able to contribute in order to make Wagtail better for you. That's it from us. I haven't seen, are there any recent questions on the things we've shown? Apart from a nice message from Simon saying, wow, that sounds mega exciting. I think we should probably wrap up here unless there are any last burning questions. Christopher from Mozilla says he's liking the collapsed left nav, which is good. Good, that's promising. I think we're gonna wrap up here, and Lisa, I'm sure, will send out to all the participants the video when it's ready, and any relevant links. If you think of any questions that you didn't have a chance to ask in the meantime, then please keep sending them. We're all available. The Wagtail Slack is a very good place to stay involved if you're not on that already. So wagtail.io/Slack. All right, I'm going to say thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
I'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.